Giving, in his words, a political route.
Have everything. All right. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all well today. There we go. All righty. Get my coffee. It is 10:06, and I'd like to bring this meeting to order of the Kane County Board. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Ellen,
Present remotely if allowed.
okay, Bates. Berman.
Here.
Doherty.
Already here.
Davis.
Davis here.
Ford. Gums.
Comes here.
Iqbal.
Iqbal present.
Juby.
Over here.
Kenyon.
Here.
Caius.
Caius present.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Thank you. Lewis.
Who's here?
Linder.
Linder here remote.
Lena.
Alina present.
Roth.
Here.
Sanchez.
Sanchez present remotely.
Silva.
Here.
Strathman,
Strathman here.
Surges,
Surges present.
Tarver,
Tarver here remotely.
Tepe,
Deputy here.
Williams,
Williams here.
Young, and Madam Chair. You have a quorum.
All right, we have Mr. Tarver, Mr. Linder. Who else is remotely, please?
Doherty,
Doherty and anybody?
Leonard, and
Sanchez.
Sanchez,
Sanchez.
and Allen, I'm sorry.
Allen? Okay, so it's Tarver, Linder, Doherty, Sanchez, Allen, and who else?
6.
Who?
Allen, Doherty, Leonard,
Leonard, that's what I'm missing. All righty.
and everybody else, Linder, Sanchez, Tarver.
You're gonna pull this.
Count 6.
6,
Six.
correct.
I understand that Mr. Tarver has work-related issues. Mr. Sanchez, the reason why, please?
Work conflicts, Madam Chair.
Work. Mr. Leonard,
Work-related issues.
thank you. Allen, Health, Linder, Health, and Doherty, Health. Do I have your permission to allow them to participate in today's meeting?
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good, thank you. All right, we have Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Davis, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
before we get started, I have a gift for the board this morning.
gifts are always welcomed, all right.
Well, I just like to say, as the chair of the Public Health Committee, I was at a meeting with the Public Health and an outing.
Microphone, please.
Oh. As the chairman of the Public Health Committee, I have a present from the Public Health Department for everybody. It is a toy that is non-toxic, does not require batteries, and it is timeless. And it will protect our mental health as we go through these difficult decisions this morning. And it's Silly Putty, and I'm going to pass it out to everybody. And I'm not going to throw it at anybody.
Have silly putty.
Careful who you give that to.
Mike is already silly enough.
Rob, you got silly putty.
Make a couple comments.
Could we, everybody calm down a little bit? We've got one more comment. We're going out of order, but I think we'll permit this. Yes.
I just want to call your attention to, this is Veterans Day weekend, Saturday. And it's because of those people who served that you people can come here and tell us you're unhappy. Other countries, you won't get to do that, to be in jail. So we had to thank America and veterans. By the way, the 11th was the armistice in World War I, Mr. Shepard. Over 800,000 people died then. And that was the beginning of this war to end war. I don't remember in how many in World War II, but I know in Vietnam, we lost over 58,000 young people.
Mhm. We did.
And
I think.
this is cute. 900 of them died the first day. And 1,100 died the 11th day. Just think of that, how awful that was. But anyway, thank you for the veterans.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that
It
to
was
our
the
attention.
11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month.
Yeah.
Several hundred people were killed after they announced the armistice.
Thank you, veterans, for our peace and freedom.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. Could I make a comment, please?
Of course, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to mention a little after 3 p.m. last Thursday, November 2nd, we received notice of this meeting and the agenda items. And I would like to question the validity of the meeting with the purpose of voting on agenda items. County ordinance states that 5 days before a special meeting, board members must be mailed the date, time, and agenda of the meeting and receive it no later than 4 days before such meeting. Since I am not an attorney or parliamentary expert, I would like to ask our parliamentary expert and attorney, Mr. Shepro, for his opinion on this matter.
All right, I will turn it over to our parliamentarian, Mr. Leonard. I was aware that you may be bringing this up. I just found out about it. And I just want to notify this board that the notice of the date was given to all of you on the calendar, I believe, October 23rd. So I just want to make you aware that that was notified to all of you for your calendar. So now I will turn that over to our parliamentarian.
Thank you,
If you
Madam
could walk
Chair.
us through this.
I have done some research preliminarily, which I have really not had a chance to share with Mr. Frank. And also, I had some questions that I would like answered before I give a response. And I would respectfully request a brief recess for the purpose of consulting with the rest of the state's attorney staff.
I would like to ask the board if we could go on recess for a half an hour. To determine this.
When will that be now?
No, right now, right now. Yes, we have to do it right. now.
Roth will make the motion.
Second Berman.
Okay, we have, thank you both. I think we can do voice vote.
Yes.
All in favor
Aye.
Aye.
to at 11:45.
Yes and no.
Do we have any opposition to this?
I
'Cause
would
we-
object.
All right, thank you, but we literally cannot move forward without seeking counsel. All right, so I'll see you all in a half an hour.
There's a question, recess or executive session?
It's a recess. It's a recess.
You can go outside and play with this. Was gonna go.
That's everybody.
Thank
All right, everybody, thank you for your patience. Our attorneys have requested some more time. So right now our approximate start time is estimated at 11 o'clock. So thanks for your patience and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Number?
Number, don't worry about it.
Not on the speaker. Okay, I switched the layout and.
There's our tax increase.
I don't like.
All right, everybody.
Is that their shoe?
We're about ready to reconvene this meeting. We need to call the roll, please.
Allen,
Alan, President.
Bates, Berman,
Berman's here.
Doherty,
Doherty here.
Avast. Ford is not here. Gums,
Comes here.
Iqbal,
Present.
Juby,
Here.
Kenyon, Caius, Leonard,
Leonard here.
Lewis,
Lewis here.
Linder,
Linder here.
Molina,
Molina present.
Roth,
Roth here.
Sanchez,
Present, I believe.
Silva,
Silva's here.
Strathman,
Strathman here.
Surgis, Tarver,
Tarver's here.
Pepe,
Happy here.
Williams,
Williams present.
and Young. It's not here. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, very good.
There won't be.
All right, thank you, everybody, for your patience as we deliberated about the issue that was brought forth by Mr. Leonard. I'd like to turn this meeting over just briefly to our Chief of Civil Division, Mr. Frank, who will be telling you about the results of Mr. Leonard's inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. SAO Frank, as we all know, the question posited by Mr. Leonard, we went into recess. I went into a meeting with fellow counsel, Mr. Ford and Mr. Shepro, as well as Ms. Brady. And we also involved ourselves with all kind of relevant parties to the question, including Madam Chair, the Vice Chair, as well as Mr. Leonard. We recommend the following to alleviate the concerns by Mr. Leonard as the objector. That there be no voting on any issue today other than the posting of the draft budget. All other issues can be discussed, but no formal vote will be taken until the 21st of November, which I believe is currently scheduled for a special county board meeting. So the only thing that would theoretically be posited for a vote today would be the resolution TMP 23-1489, which I think is the first on the agenda, authorizing the draft budget be placed on the public display. I want to be very clear for everybody so that everybody understands what you're voting on. The vote is only to post what is currently posited. The pursuant to state statute, which for anybody who wants to look this up, 55 ILCS 5-6-1001 means that even if it's posted, it can still always be amended. So you are not voting to approve the budget one way or the other. I know that'll be a question for today. All it does is it's a procedural requirement to allow you to post it such that the vote can be had on the 21st and be in compliance with state and Kane County law. So as it stands now, our recommendation to the board, if you so choose, would be to only vote on that first agenda item. All other things be opened up for discussion if that's the way you want to go. And then that will be the best path forward, given the objection levied by Mr. Leonard. And my understanding is that Mr. Leonard is in agreement generally with that path. I will let him speak for himself on that, though.
Mr. Leonard, do you have any comments on this?
I agree with what Mr. Frank said, and I am happy to vote on posting the agenda and discussing other items, but no votes on those. Thank you.
There's no reason to discuss.
Very good. Okay, so does everybody understand the direction we're going to be taking?
Well, do we,
Yes, yes, sir.
is there a question? I think it's good that we approve our draft budget putting on display, but as far as discussion of the other items on the agenda, I just assume delay that until we vote on them.
All right, well, that'll come up when we have that item,
Right.
but just we have the direction. All right, so with that, I don't think we need to have anything else. We can move on to our agenda. And I'd like to give me just a minute, please. We have now public comment. I'd like to remind everybody that please obviously be civil. And on agenda items, you'll be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. So Brian Anderson, Mr. Anderson, are you here? There he is.
Good morning, Brian Anderson, Sugar Grove, Illinois. So I heard Mr. Frank loud and clear. I did come to speak on that resolution approving the budget, and I will be back on the 21st when there's the vote for it. But I thought since I've spent an hour sitting here, I might as well get up and speak. I won't need 5 minutes. The first thing I want to do is I want to thank all of the board members that were here last week in the executive committee. As a citizen of Kane County, I was delighted that the vote was outstanding. I've been coming here for 9 months. You shut down the gas tax 11-1. Outstanding. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're demonstrating 2 things to me. Number one, you're listening to your constituents, which is part of your vision and mission statement. But number 2, the fiscal responsibility piece. So thank you for that. The reason I'm here today, and you've heard me talk about it through these other subcommittees, and I will be back on the 21st when it's up for the vote, but I thought I would plant the seed today. Now, I've got a couple of talking points, and I'm very aware they're not in the control of the board indirectly. The housing market is so unaffordable that the buyers need to make nearly an extra $115,000 to afford the average home. That's 40 grand more than their average earnings. That's out of October 18th, 2023 from Fortune magazine. Number 2, Illinois property taxes are among the highest in the nation. This is off the Civics Federation. It's an independent and nonpartisan government research organization that provides analysis and recommendations on government finance issues for the Chicago region and the state of Illinois. Our property taxes are among the highest in the nation. I think I left my phone, but I was going to show you a graph. We're number 2 right now in the nation. Kane County has one of the highest median property taxes in the United States and is ranked 32. Let me say that again. Kane County is ranked 32nd out of the 3143 counties for median property taxes. Here's another one. And I apologize because it's out of June, not November. Illinois unemployment for June is the 5th highest in the United States. Illinois remains one of just 13 states with fewer jobs than prior to the pandemic in 2020. I say all this to say this, or excuse me, I say all that to say this. We've been under a freeze with the portion of the Kane County property tax for 13 years, and we've managed to do well. I hear in these subcommittees, and you bring up your finance people, and you talk about what we have in reserves and surplus and lack. The fact of the matter is every department on the Kane County government has their place. Yours is to be the board members and make decisions based on the information you get. It shouldn't be politicized. The treasurer of Kane County is doing a fabulous job. We have a surplus. Everybody in this room knows that. We talk about Miss Hopkins that comes up and gives us the over budget. Well, we've got 53 million. That's a good thing. I have a lot in my checking for a reason. If I need to use it, it's not a bad thing. It's okay. So for 13 years, we've not raised our portion on the Kane County tax piece. and we've managed to do just fine. The reason I brought up these other data points is, folks, the country is struggling mightily with home prices, with gas prices, with mortgage, with inflation. All of our bills are going up. That's not your problem. But what you can control as a board is to make a prudent decision. We're not going to raise
Thank you,
the
sir.
portion of the Kane County taxes. Much, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mary Lee Liu. Mary Lee?
Morning. My name is Mary Lee. I am an Aurora resident since 2010. I am here today to speak to you about the City of Aurora's casino TIF. TIFs are complicated by design. What the City of Aurora is presenting is to divert taxes from 7 bodies, most importantly, Kane County. Taxes for the casino will not go to the county, but stay inside the district for the next 23 years. The casino has already been the recipient of a TIF in the late 80s, early 90s, and they received an extension. Now, when the governing bodies are supposed to reap the benefits of that, they are moving location to request another TIF to be given another handout. Your board is considering property tax increases, gas tax increases. Your whole meeting today is based on taxes and levies. So it is not fair that you would let casino take the funds that the county should be getting. Penn Entertainment made $2.7 billion in gross profits in the past 2 years. $2.75 billion with a B. And their CEO makes $65 million in compensation in 1 year alone. Furthermore, you should know that Penn Entertainment, as of February this year, purchased Barstool for $550 million. By August of this year, they sold it for $1. Taking $550 million, but they can take money from our community, from Kane County, and then they can burn it their own money. Why should we let them burn our funds? You can build a casino. I'm just asking that you not let them do it with funds that should stay within the county. How much tax money would be diverted from Kane County? Well, a handout was provided earlier for the specific numbers. The City of Aurora has estimated that this TIF will remove $5.25 million in revenue from the impacted taxing bodies each and every single year. Kane County's portion of this is estimated to be over $250,000 per year from the casino TIF. It has been estimated that the Kane County is already losing close to $1.3 million in revenue per year in TIFs overall. These numbers will increase if the $120 million casino TIF is passed. So please consider that Sugar Grove is looking at $120 million TIF for warehouses by the Crown family, who are multi-billionaires. Geneva is also looking at massive TIFs for warehouses. It will be the county that has to pay to repair all of these roads that are damaged by the truck traffic and the warehouses that will be coming forth. The JRB process allows for taxing bodies to vote no on this TIF. A majority no vote will force the municipalities to have a supermajority vote to pass the TIF. Please encourage somebody on the county board to represent this board at the JRB this Wednesday. I think it's a good time to ask your CFO to run some of these numbers that I'm presenting and crunch how Kane County will be losing, how much they'll be losing as a taxing body from this proposed TIF. There are 58 TIFs across 14 municipalities, which means Kane has consistently been nickeled and dimed by the growing number of TIFs. Again, this Wednesday, November 8th at 10 a.m. is the GRB meeting. I would please ask that this body pass a resolution to vote no at this meeting and to send an elected board member to represent this body on Wednesday. The purpose of the JRB is not to determine blight, but to represent the county's financial interest. And I appreciate you listening to my concern today. Thank you.
The next speaker is Catherine Cuneo. Catherine, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much.
Very good. You have 5 minutes, please.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Kate Cuneo. I am a mother of 3 young kids in Batavia schools. I'm constituent of Kane County. I'll try and be quick. I'm not going to definitely take up 5 minutes since someone else already kind of went over everything. I'm again just asking that the county board send an actual elected member and not staff to the JRB meeting this Wednesday to vote no on the casino TIF. Like you already heard, Kane County is losing $1.3 million in revenue every year for TIFs. You guys are in the middle of negotiating budgets, and we don't need to lose more of our taxpayer money to bail out a very successful corporation. We need our tax dollars to be spent in our county, in our schools, our libraries, our parks, our constituents, not to bail out all of these, not to fund these corporate handouts. So I am asking that you do have your own CFO take an independent look at the casino TIF in particular. See for yourself how this is not beneficial to Kane County, and send someone to vote no at the JRB meeting on Wednesday. And the Kane County does have the power to help stop this bad deal from going through. And if these TIFs continually just get pushed through, there will be more. There's going to be a next one and a next one, and we will continue to see our tax dollars funded to corporations instead of what we, the constituents, need. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jim Whittington. Jim?
Good morning. First off, I just kind of disappointed that when my clock changed and I gained an hour, I lost it this morning being here. But I think one reason why, I mean, you'll see that we consistently attend these meetings because we're very interested in what's going on. And I can assure you, and I know you can't help it, you schedule the meetings, when you're all available. But I can assure you, for every person out here, there's at least a couple hundred people that feel the same way that we do. And we're watching everything that's being done. So, I'm just going to talk about, I know that Brian mentioned the surpluses that you do have, and you don't really, in the extra interest income that you have. But I'm going to continue to drill about finding ways, reviewing expenses and cutting out waste, because I believe it is there. There's a saying, where there's a will, there's a way. And you have to be willing to do it. You got to sit down. They've got a couple of weeks before you're going to take a final vote. And I'll bet if we were here all day and we put everything up on the screen and we went through every line item, we would find waste that you could cut out. There's discretionary items that you don't need. Now, I'm going to give you an example from a long time ago. So I don't want you to just pick this one little example, but I live near the Red Gate Bridge and the bike paths, and I use them quite often to ride my bike, to walk my dog, whatever. And years ago, and this must be a forest preserve thing, all of a sudden there were these really nice benches installed, permanent benches on the river. And I got to tell you, all the hundreds of times that I've gone by there, not one person sat on them. And here's an example. We don't need stuff like this. And I'll bet you there's stuff in your budget. And because you don't practice zero-based budgeting, I'm sure what happens in these departments, they'll have an extra 50 grand left over. And I say, geez, we got to spend this money, because if we don't, it won't be there next year for us or whatever. And they find something to spend the money on. And you got to stop that kind of thinking. Okay. So You know, the last thing I got a couple of minutes left. This is slightly off agenda, but in one respect, Mr. Kenyon, thank you for your comments about the veterans. I'm sure it was well intended. My father was a veteran. All my uncles were veterans. I almost was an ROTC guy, but that didn't happen. Otherwise, I would have been one too. Okay, so I appreciate that comment, but I also kind of feel like the way you turned and you looked at all of us, it's kind of like it was kind of condescending in a way. Of course, we have the right to be here. Okay, and there's a lot of us out here very concerned about what's going on in our country, how some people can demonstrate and other people can't. Okay. Some people can do violent things and it's described on TV as nonviolent. Okay. And just a good example, I'm not saying that the people, I almost went to on January 6th, that I tried to convince my brother-in-laws to drive with me.
Mr. Anderson, you really are trespassing away from the agenda items at this
I
point.
know. Well, I had 5 minutes to talk about the budget, and I'm using some of the 5 minutes for this
No,
last
no,
comment.
sir. No, it's to
Oh,
budget, but thank you for your comments.
All right, you know, I'm not surprised, Madam Chairman. I'm not surprised. You are the Marie Antoinette of Kane County.
Thank you, sir.
Every time you speak, we.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. That's it. I don't have the names of, last speaker I have is Mr. Whittington. Mary Lee has already spoken, and I've gone through the previous list that I have, which includes Brian Anderson, Mary Lee again, Catherine.
Bed tag.
Is that an additional one? Because we picked them up right before 11 o'clock, or 10 o'clock, I'm sorry, 10 o'clock. Okay, Michelle, you'll be the last speaker.
Hello, my name's Michelle Bettag, St. Charles. I've spoke many times as well, kind of the same topic. You know, it takes a lot of work to do your research on a lot of these topics. And, you know, as we're sitting here listening to the budget the last time, you know, questions are asked and you wonder if some of the board members even do any of the research to look on these budget items or do any of the research for other situations that come up, or if you're just voting. And I feel that, you know, people who've been on the board for a long time are asking questions that surprise me. And I've only been coming for about 9 months, and, you know, I'm kind of catching on to some of the stuff. And I'm just wondering if, you know, the time commitment that you all signed up for and took an oath for, or if you guys are doing it, because a lot of the stuff is very easily accessible to do research on and to find education and maybe do a educated vote. One being the budget. You know, again, cutting costs, people keep saying it, you know, we didn't take a family vacation this year because the costs of education, the cost of groceries, the cost of everything is skyrocketing. You know, our business is tanking in the meantime. It's not just me, it's a lot of people having the same problem. The credit card debt is the highest it's ever been in our country. Our country is being attacked from every single side. Our intelligence, our military, our economics are spread thinner than they have been in probably a century. And we're sitting here talking about not cutting costs, adding to our expenses and our taxes, which we already pay the second highest in the country, the Chicago Collier counties. And in the meantime, I'm listening to Madam Chair spend $750,000 on a plan for a new government center that will cost $110 million, a new public health center that's 30 million plus dollars. And it seems like monopoly fake money, but the costs are crazy. Like the costs of our budget need to be cut, just like every single one of us probably in this room. And I would assume a lot of you, I know a lot of you, a few of you have a lot of money and maybe it's not an issue, but for the most part, the population in this county on both sides into the middle are struggling. And I would ask that, you know, whether you're have time to take a look at the budget yourself, talk to others that are on the board that have time, whatever, I ask you to please, from the bottom of my heart, ask you to start cutting costs. This needs to change. This county is being attacked from every side, and this county is losing residents. We had a realtor speak here. We're in the real estate business. People are leaving because they can't stand the government. They can't stand the taxes. And you guys are going to price people out. So when people aren't paying their tax bill, that's going to be even a bigger problem. And we have all these funds that all this cash is sitting in. Use some of the reserves. If this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what is a rainy day. Okay. Please consider voting against this additional funding for our taxpayers to come up with. Thank you.
Includes public comment. Mr. Lawson, I don't have your name on the list. Couldn't you come to sign up, sir? Couldn't you come to sign up like everybody does? Sir, thank you very much. Next time, please just arrive a few minutes earlier. All right. Kathleen, please, you're up next.
Okay, this presentation is very similar to the presentation that I gave at the executive committee. I did update one slide and added one slide, but pretty much it's the same presentation, which includes going through the property tax calculation, if everyone can is up for listening to that again. Next slide. So highlights of the 2024 budget, the general fund, the proposed 2024 general fund budget is $122,418,212, which is actually $779,000 less than the 2023 general fund budget. Some of the highlights in terms of changes from prior years, the revenue in the general fund includes a property tax increase of 2.4 million. Transfers in of 185,000 from the public safety RTA fund and 111,000 from the judicial technology fund. Both of those funds, if you recall, I've been talking about those funds in the past. Both of those funds are funded with RTA sales tax revenue. We have 4 funds in the county that receive RTA sales tax revenue. 75% of that RTA sales tax revenue goes to the transportation department, 10% goes to the general fund, and then 9% and 6% go to these 2 smaller funds. The percent allocation was decided on by the board. The county board makes that decision of how much they want to allocate. And it has changed over the years. At one point in the history of the RTA sales tax, we had 5 funds that received RTA sales tax. One of them was closed out. And at one point, KDOT was receiving 82%. So the percent allocation has changed over time. But in the interest of, we're still researching, particularly the judicial technology fund, if we can close that out. What I did, instead of recommending to the board that we close those 2 funds and then just move that RTA sales tax into the general fund, What I did instead is whatever those two funds didn't budget, I'm transferring those, that addition back over to the general fund. As it stands right now, the general fund budget is using 9.6 million in reserves, excess reserves. On the expense side in the general fund, so the general fund budget includes the 3% wage increases for all non-union employees. It includes the equity adjustments that were done as part of the equity project. There were departments that, most of the departments participated in that equity adjustment project. Some departments, there was a few that did not participate in that equity adjustment project. The state's attorney's office developed their own equity adjustment amount outside of the county's equity adjustment project. This budget includes, it also includes every vacant position that all the departments requested. The other highlight, the sheriff's office, he did offer when I went around and tried to meet with some of the larger departments to see if they could cut their budgets. And we talked about which line items we could cut. The sheriff had offered to cut his adult correction staff salary and wage line item by $1 million because there's less people in jail now with the Safety Act. So he doesn't need as many adult correction officers. And then he also cut, when we were looking at his detainee medical costs, because the county is responsible for paying the medical costs of those that are detained. That amount has been pretty flat. And with the decrease in the jail population, he had originally budgeted $4.5 million for medical costs, and we cut it down to 3.2 million for the budget. And we'll see if it's, we'll see from here if that amount is still the amount that's needed. On the special revenue funds, so these are all the other funds in the county, like transportation, health department, animal control, law library, for a variety of different departments are in this special revenue funds. The 2024 total appropriation is 271 million, which is about 1.2 million more than the 2023 budget. And a lot of that special revenue fund money, of course, is capital expenses. This is a new slide since last Wednesday, just a reminder that the
hold on. Yes.
Make it a little.
Yes.
Oh, Blair, zoom in. Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair.
This was in the 2024 budget policy that was passed by the board in the spring. This definition is included that a balanced budget means no fund reserves will be utilized to balance the budget, with the exception of the King County Department of Transportation and departments whose funding comes only from grants. The 2024 budget for the general fund does have 9.6 million use of reserves to balance the budget. But it's not the only fund that has reserves, but it is by far the largest. And since the general fund is our general operating fund of the county, it holds most of the salaries. About 90 of the 122 million is salaries and benefits. From a financial management standpoint, it's a concern to use reserves. Okay, next slide. So this is the general fund budget compared to last year's budget. So the property tax increase, I put the property tax increase all in the general fund, except for about 75,000 of it is in the Veterans Assistance Commission Fund, because that is how the county chooses to fund the Veterans Commission. So the property taxes in the general fund are up 2.5 million over last year. Other tax revenue, this is your state sales tax revenue, the income tax revenue we receive from the state, the 10% of the RTA sales tax revenue, personal property replacement taxes, cannabis taxes, Those are all those other taxes. Licenses and permits are flat. Grants, as of right now, are going down a little bit, but one thing with grants, somebody can apply for a grant during the year that wasn't in the budget, of course, and it could go up. Charges for services, as we've been talking about, these are your things like court filing fees, recorders fees. They have been declining over the years, all for different reasons. A lot of the court fees are going down because for two reasons. Judges are waiving fees, and then also you used to be able to charge the filing fee on each document essentially that you filed, and now they're just trying to just charge it on like an entire case that you're filing. Recorder fees are down a little bit. So their fees just generally, they fluctuate, I think, with the activity, with the economy, but they're forecasted to go down for next year. Fine revenue is up slightly. Reimbursements, a big chunk of this reimbursement revenue is our court services department. A lot of their staff their salaries are reimbursed by the state. There's other reimbursements in there. Interest revenue includes the interest revenue that's allocated to the general fund. And then the other line item is mainly the use of the fund balance, and that $9 million in the 2024 column is the use of the fund balance, AKA reserves. And then transfers in. So last year we transferred in money from the reserves, and we called it transfers in. This year. So that's what the 17, that most of that 16.6 of that 17 million was transfers in from reserves. This year, we're calling it fund balance utilization, which is why it's on a different line, but essentially the same thing. On the expenditure side, so expenditures are up from personnel salaries and wages are up from 73.6 to 78.2 million. Those amounts do include the 3% cost of living. They include the equity adjustments. And the way that we did the budget, we took every employee who was currently working today as of when we did the budget in July and August. So that is built into this. And then that also, that salaries and wages line item includes vacant positions as well. Employee benefits, we did a different approach to looking at employee benefits. I think we have a better number this year, even though our healthcare contract, the costs were up just a little bit. Based on actual use of our employee benefits, I think the 14 million is a better number for the budget. Contractual services, these are a host of your typical contractual services across the county for a variety of services, IT costs, etc. Commodities, those are your utilities costs. We cut those back in the budget a little bit, just looking at actual spending, and thought that they were over budgeting. So we cut those down. And as I've explained to people, because there's always a concern that, well, what if the energy prices go up? And my recommendation to that is, well, if they do go up, that's what you have your reserves for. But let's plan on putting into the budget an amount that's more realistic. Capital, there really isn't a lot of capital in the general fund. That's why the county set up the capital projects fund, which is essentially just an extension of the general fund, and was done just to isolate all the capital projects so they could be seen separately. And then transfers out of that 4 million, over 3 million of it is for debt service. And we will continue to have debt service payments for many years yet, or to the tune of around 3 million out of this fund, out of the general fund. So does anyone have any questions on?
Are there any questions?
That, okay.
No,
Oh.
Mr. Iqbal.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
You mentioned that,
Mr. Iqbal, thank you. Microphone.
you mentioned that.
Mr. Iqbal, your microphone is off. There you go.
Better?
Much better.
You mentioned that the state attorney's office had their own equity adjustment computed. Did you agree with that, or you did not agree with that? Is it part of the budget, or has it been taken out?
So the state's attorney, office did their own equity study and asked that be included in the budget. The Human Services Committee, the HR director, did the equity study for the county, and presented the results of that equity study about a month ago. So I was not involved in assessing the salaries. But in terms of what is in the budget, the state's attorney did prepare their own equity study of their own staff and included in the budget. And it's still there in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
As part of internal control, they do have that authority to do that.
Well, that is true that they have authority to suggest, but it is our responsibility to accept or to reject.
I agree. I agree. You're absolutely correct. Well, and that goes with all the budget items. You're absolutely correct. Any other questions? None?
Okay, so then the next few
I'm sorry,
pages.
ma'am. Might as well stop you there. Doherty.
Yes, Mr. Doherty.
Okay, I am super confused. Your special reserve fund total appropriation, 271,946 million. 271 million. That's a little bit more than the 23 budget at 270. But then when I go to the website that was set up by the previous auditor, fiscal year 22 budget revenue and expenses was 485 million. Are we spending 200 million less dollars between 22 and 24?
I'm not sure about that $400 million amount that you're referring to, but I mean, if you add the general fund budget and the special revenue fund budgets together, you're approaching that. So that would be all funds.
And it perhaps made that, and this is something, Mr. Doherty, could it possibly include the CARES Act money and the ARPA money? Could that possibly have been included in that total amount? Just a question.
Yeah, so of course it's included because it's the total budget revenue for 22, 485 million. So yeah, of course, they're all expenses and revenue are included. My point is, we on the agenda, we're voting on the executive summary for the draft budgets, or I'm sorry, for the executive summary is 300 and zoom it up. Hold on. 394 million. So is that the right number, or is it the 200 that you're pointing out to for the funds? Or where on your budget presentation, where does it say 385 million?
So it's the general fund of 122 and the special revenue funds of 271 together. Those two together are the total appropriations.
Okay, but you never put that on any of your pages?
Well, I have it split between on that page where it says, if you would go back to that first page.
That's page number 2.
General fund and then special revenue fund. And then I think in the packet, the resolution for the appropriation, the total appropriation, that has the total appropriation dollar amount of the 390 million in the executive summary.
Yeah. So the general fund is 122 plus the 271.
Yes.
But again, on that entire budget, there's nowhere where it's totaled. You got the budget, the general fund over here, revenue totals 123 million, 122 million, and then expenditures 122. Where's the expenditures for 380?
It's the 122 plus the 271. And then in the agenda packet, the resolution it's the resolution to approve the appropriation. The executive summary spells out the total.
Right. It's a total, but no. My point is, I don't see where it's telling me where it's all going.
So the budget included in the agenda packet is all the detail for every single fund in the county. So all those funds. So if you look, there's the general fund, it has all the detail. There's pages of detail, and then there's a total that totals 122. And then right after that are all the pages of all the individual. There's like over 100 special revenue funds. It has each fund, and then the total at the end is the 271.
Yeah, but you don't have it all together on one page.
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Doherty. Is there any other questions? Or are there any other questions? I should say not is. No? Okay.
Okay, so the next few pages are just all of the funds across the county that are utilizing their fund balance, some of their fund balance, AKA fund balance, reserves, mean the same thing. Using some of their reserves to balance their budget for next year. ARPA, capital projects. We've had those funds for a while. Obviously, the American Rescue Plan funds, we've had them for a while. So we are using what has already been received in order to spend those dollars next year, because we've awarded some of those funds already. We just haven't dispersed them. The Capital Projects Fund is the fund that the buildings is primarily used for all the buildings management departments. They're going to fund their 2024 projects primarily by using their fund balance. There's no real transfers of revenue into that fund. That fund balance has been built up over time by transfers of money from the general fund. And then just a host of all of your other funds. We can just, scroll through them.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
are
Yes.
these all special revenue funds that we're looking at right now?
Everything.
I don't get the title at the top.
Right, so everything except the general fund is a
these
special
are-
revenue fund. Mhm.
It's general government is what you have listed.
General government / general fund. If you go
Yes.
back to that page, it says general
Larry,
government.
can you go back
/ general
to
fund.
page-
It's page 5. Go back, yeah. So the middle column says general fund. So I grouped.
Blair, could you bring it up a little bit, please?
Yeah. I grouped
Thank you.
I grouped the general fund, the insurance liability fund, the Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund, and the FICA Social Security Fund together. Because for the employees in the general fund, their IMRF and their FICA Social Security, the employer share, is paid out of those separate funds. So if you're like, for example, a sheriff's employer, a state's attorney employee, your salary is in the general fund, but the employer share of the IMRF and FICA and Social Security is coming out of a special revenue fund. For departments like KDOT, they have their employees in a special revenue fund. So we budgeted the employee salary and the employer share of IMRF and FICA Social Security in that fund because it's like a separate special revenue fund. And then the insurance liability fund is the fund that
pays all of the umbrella insurance, the county's overall insurance, workers' comp, unemployment comp, that all comes out of that fund.
Spates, is that all right?
Yeah.
Clarified?
Thank you. So everything at the top four of the general fund and everything below the top four are special revenue.
Well, no, the insurance liability fund is its own separate special revenue fund. I grouped it together because those are funds that are kind of part of the overall general government aspects of the county. That insurance liability fund is handling the insurance for the entire county. Yeah.
But below that, they're all special revenue funds.
They continue to be, yes, insurance liability is special revenue, IMRF is special revenue, FICA, and then all of those other ones are special revenue. Some of them are technically called capital projects funds by governmental accounting standards, but that's getting kind of in the weeds, but yes, they're all special revenue funds.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Iqbal.
Madam Chair, I have a question on the insurance liability fund. I look at the list that was presented to us by HR director. My question is not on the items, but what are we doing about the insurance liability? You have some wonderful committees, very high-powered committees, but no one is looking at how to maintain or contain this risk. There has to be a guideline which is called, should be called most probably risk management guidelines. Are we advising or telling people what to do to cut down our risk, to cut down our liabilities? Generally, every corporation has that in consultation with the insurance carrier. And I suggest that we should do something like that to let our staff know where liability lies and how they can be safer and reduce the cost
of risk. And Mr. Sturgis.
Always invited to the Human Services Committee. We have, our trending is nothing but spectacular in the past 4 to 5 years. From where we were to where we are is it truly, we have been focused on cleaning up severity and frequency. We have put additional staff on in as much as the workers' compensation side. For the general liability, we have just looked at asking for some additional help from our outside vendors, but the trending can't be more spectacular. And we're pleased as punch. So Mo, I don't know really what you're looking for, but move it back to committee. We always have an open door, you know.
I would agree. I think that's a fine discussion to happen at the committee.
No, I don't question what is being done. The question is there a document that I could get hold of and say how I could work better in the county?
And that again could be brought forward to Human Services, where that document could be created for that purpose. And let it go through committee. And we can't answer that right now for the budget, but a fine opportunity for discussion. Absolutely. Ms. Silva.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. This is Dr. Silva. Actually, yeah, I second guessed my comment because it is a budgetary talk, but I think that's a great point my colleagues just made, because I think that's an ongoing conversation that should be had. And while we're doing well, I think it's important to continuously look at this. And I think it's under the purview of each director. I think a lot of it comes down to training. So when we train our individual staff in the foreseeing or foretelling of what could happen and how to avoid it, I think we avoid getting into some trouble. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Sturgis, you will have your work cut out for you.
But we have Ms. Silva as
Opportunity.
a member of the committee, so I'm
Yeah.
very excited to have her with us.
Very good, very good. And you will have a guest with Mr. Iqbal, I'm sure. Any other questions on this? Okay, please go ahead, Kathy.
Blair, I think you can flip through the next slide. And the next slide. Okay, the general fund forecast and reserve target. So as of October 31st, our general account had $62 million. And our various special reserves, which ideally we could use some of this to fund the capital projects that have been identified for the buildings management departments, if that is the board's decision. So we have 85 million in reserves. And the way that you do your reserve calculation in terms of how much should you have for emergencies, if we're using our 90-day target, you look at what's upcoming. So if our upcoming, and this is just for the general fund, and again, this is our main fund. For the general fund, if the budget is 122 million for next year, you'd want to have at least 90 days of that for emergencies. And that would be 30 million. And then, so if you subtract 30 million from what we currently have of 85, we have 55 in excess of that. If we forecast out to the end of the year, right now, we're in the last month of the fiscal year. The county's fiscal year ends November 30th. And just looking at where we're headed in the next month, we will probably end up using some of those reserves, bar any new revenue item that comes in. So we will end up using a little bit of those reserves just to fund our current year. For 2024, we're now forecasting, it's in the draft budget, to use 9 million of those reserves to balance the budget. So your reserves are coming down even more, those excess reserves. And then for 2025, we would need, if the buildings management department does complete every project that's in their 2024 plan, they have a 5-year plan, which we've talked about. If they were to complete all those projects, they will, and move on to their 2025 plan, they will need to fund it. And right now that plan is $8.2 million. And we would, the only source of revenue that we currently have for that right now is these excess reserves. So that would also be using your reserves. So as you go down the line, you know, essentially by the end of 2026, you only have 5.9 million of reserves that are in excess of your emergency reserve. So that is why, you know, many board members have called me and they've said, do you have enough cash for next year? Well, yes, we have enough cash for next year. But I have to be in my role as finance director, I have to be forward looking, and the county has, you know, put various plans in place. And if you want to do the capital plan, and if you want to continue funding your general fund operating expenses at the level that they are, you will dwindle away. You will eat through your reserves, unless there's some other new revenue stream that came in to the county. Next slide. So did we want to go through the property tax calculation explanation again? Yes?
Are any of these slides coming up different than the ones we've done
No.
already?
No.
Then,
I'm okay if we stop now.
On tape, yeah.
Definitely.
Last week.
all right, so we're fine with all of that?
I think this is a very important slide, and I would like to go through this slide.
This
Maybe-
particular slide? Okay, very good. Mr. Kenyon, please. Please go ahead.
Go through the property tax calculation? Okay. So the next several slides, I used the template that Mark Armstrong has in one of his little booklets. Same terminology. I just went through the property tax calculation using 3 different inflation rates, a 5% rate, a 0% rate, and a rate that essentially I backed into that percent number because I developed the budget and came up with a levy amount. So that's why it's 3.211864 and ongoing. So the way that you do your property tax calculation, you start with your prior year rate setting value, which was $17.4 billion. You take your prior year tax extension, which was 57.7 million, and you come to you calculate your prior year tax rate, which is the same 0.0033110, because the rate setting value and the tax extension are the same at this point in the calculation. Next slide, please. So the next slide, the next step in the calculation is you add on your inflation factor. So the inflation factors that I used for this calculation were 5%, the 3.2% number, and 0%. And so if you use that inflation factor, using 5%, you come up with a current year maximum tax extension before new property of 60.6 million. If you use the 3%, 59.5 million, and 0%, 57.7 million. So that's essentially saying at this point, and let's use the 5%, that if you tried to increase your property taxes more than 60.6 million, you could be subject to a truth in taxation hearing. So that's what that number means. So next slide. So then you take your new maximum tax extensions at those various inflation rates, and you divide them into your current year rate setting value before new property. So the current year rate setting values, which is your equalized assessed valuation, you see the term EAV, that current value before even considering the value of new property that's coming on the tax rolls is $19 billion. So if you divide that maximum tax extension into that new rate setting value, you get a new tax rate. You can see that the tax rates are all different, of course, because you're using different inflation factors for each of these scenarios. Next slide. And I was telling somebody, someone was asking about this calculation, and I feel like saying I don't write the laws, I just help interpret them. But this calculation is how it's done. If you look in all the literature and Illinois Department of Revenue, this is how this calculation works. So after you've considered all of your existing property and you come up with a new tax rate, at this point in the calculation is when you add your new property to your calculation. So the new property is 212 million. And when you use your maximum tax rate on the new property, you come up with those various amounts. So for example, the maximum tax rate using 5% is 0.00318,304. If you multiply that by 212 million, you get 676,000. If you go to the 0% column, it's a different maximum tax rate. So if you use 0.00303,146 times your 212 million, you get 644,000. And that amount on that last line, that is just extending your calculation to new property. So that would be the taxes that would be extended on the new property only. Okay, next slide. So then the next step in the process is you add your current year property EAV of 19,044 million, and you add to that your new property of 212 million, and you come up with 19.256 million. Next slide. And so the next part of the calculation, you take your maximum tax rate. So that's on that third line there, the maximum tax rate. You take that rate and you multiply it by your brand new total rate setting value of 19,256 million, and you get a brand new maximum tax extension, which as you can see is all different, of course, because the tax rates are different. And at 5%, your tax extension is now 61,295,000. At 0%, it's 58,376,000. So you go to the last page. So at this point in the calculation, and remember the 5%, the 3.2%, the 0%, that is essentially your inflation rate that you're using, a consumer price rate that you're using that or PTEL, whichever doesn't exceed 5%. So now you have your prior year tax extension, which was the same, of course, because that's what it was. Then you take your current year maximum tax extension based on taking the maximum tax rate times your new property plus your existing property. And what is the difference between those two dollar amounts? That's the annual change in dollars. So as you can see, for 5%, it's an additional 3.5. At 3.2%, it's an additional 2.5. And at 0%, essentially all you're doing is just getting taxes on your new property. When you calculate the percent difference, you'll notice that the percent difference at 5% is 6.1%, which would throw you into a truth in taxation hearing. And again, there's two different rules. There's the PTEL rule. There's a 5% for PTEL and there's a 5% for truth in taxation. Two separate 5% can be very confusing. But if you start with an inflation rate of 5%, once you add in new property, it kicks you over. If we didn't have new property, it might not kick you over. It might or might not. But once you add in the new property, it ends up kicking it over 5%, which would trigger a truth in taxation hearing. Any questions?
Are there any questions on this? Yes.
I was just
Oh,
making-
no.
I understood it this time.
Wonderful.
So
Mr.
thank you,
Roth?
Kathy.
Thank you, Ms. Bates.
Sure.
Ms. Roth, Mr. Roth.
Here. Just for edification, Kathy. It came out to 4.3, the middle column, 4.363. If it goes above 5, we have to have a truth. So you came up with that ratio and you're going 6 percentage points in. So if you went to 4.9, is that possible? Or adding, to make it 6.5 at the end, would that force you over 5? Are we going out 6 values and just changing?
So, I mean, the reason why I came up with this number is as I've been doing the budget
Right.
throughout the last couple of months, the report that comes up with the EAVs was being modified throughout the
understand.
process.
Right.
And the new state laws on increasing the general household exemption from 6,000 to 8,000
Right.
and the senior homestead exemption from 6,000 to 8,000, those were still being processed through the system. So literally it wasn't until the last couple of weeks that the number was
We're
kind of
locked in. I understand.
coming, yes, to a point where it was going to be a good number. So I was erring on the side of caution. And that's
Okay.
why that middle number is not 4.9.
Okay.
If that's what you were
Well,
asking.
I'm just looking at it from a mathematical
Yes.
calculation, and it's easy
Yes.
for me to say I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? No?
Could do. You got a calculator. I don't want to show them.
Bring your slide in.
Okay.
I have a circular slide.
Next slide. Okay.
Number 7.
Again, just the same slide that we've been showing to show that the 2024 budget includes $12 million in budgeted interest earned across all funds. And the 2023, that is an estimate of what will be earned across all funds of the county.
I have a question. The estimate of 18 million or almost 19 million, is that estimate that you've come up with, or is that per recommendation of the treasurer?
We used some of the information from the treasurer's slides to come up with, that's why we have the word unaudited on here, and estimate. It's just an estimate at this time. It's just an estimate at this time. I mean, the year's not over.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last slide is the equity adjustments from the equity adjustment study that was done across the county. And there were $1.8 million in equity adjustments that have been built into all the funds. And then the state's attorney, and actually I need to correct that number. The state's attorney's office budgeted employee salary increases, their own equity adjustments. That $1,079,000, that's just in the general fund. There's about 300,000. That's also, the state's attorney has some staff and some other special revenue funds, but in the general fund, the state's attorney budgeted $1,079,000 for equity adjustments for staff. Does anyone have any questions?
If I may, just to go back on, so the treasurer's suggested budget for 20, well, just even 18. The earned interest. So he's estimating that the end of this year, we're going to be getting 18,000, and then next year we're budgeting approximately 12 million, I'm sorry. 18
Well,
million.
my staff and I came up with the 18 million number based on the information that has been presented by the treasurer's office in the treasurer's reports.
And if interest continues to go down, because I believe the last report looks like inflation has been somewhat stabilized, that's what I was reading over the weekend. If those interests goes down, is that going to impact the operation of our all special revenue funds? Will they then also be decreased? What that's going to look like? Rather, is it fixed or is it dynamic?
Well, these are estimates. I mean, everything in the budget, all of our revenue is an estimate. This $12 million amount was provided to us by the treasurer. When I asked him for an estimate of what is the interest earned that's going to be earned across the county next year, he said 12 million. So that is what we added to the budget.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions for Kathleen?
Thank you.
Mr. Doherty, thank you. No, Mr. Doherty, please.
Thank you. So you're saying that right now it's estimated, what's your estimated interest?
For 2023, it's 18.9 million.
Okay, and how much do we have now?
We're still working on that.
How much was the interest so far?
I think the treasurer's report is probably the best source of that at this time.
Okay. I don't have that in front of me. Do you?
Pardon me?
You have that number in front of you?
I don't, I would look at the last treasurer's report provided at the last finance committee meeting from October 25th.
Madam Chair, do you have that in front of you?
Hold on a second. There's a sideways conversation going on. My apologies, but that other matter can be handled separately. Can you, Mr. Doherty, could you kindly repeat the question you just asked?
Kathleen stated that the interest collected was on the treasurer's report, most recent report. I don't have it in front of me. Do you happen to recall what the number is from October?
I'm pulling it up.
Kathleen is pulling it up now.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's fine.
The question
Sometimes
popped
things
into my head during the presentation, not before, otherwise I'd be ready.
I guess it's.
It's not exactly typo, it's within like 2 dots. Or so, so that's what. Never, I never knew what they were talking. Oh,
If you look at the treasurer's report, unfortunately, there's a, I wish we could pull it up. There's a slide that says projected versus promise versus actual performance interest earned fiscal year 2020.
You need your microphone.
Oh, there's a slide that says projected versus promise versus actual performance interest earned fiscal year 2023, and it has the interest earned by month. It doesn't have a total on it. But I think
That's okay. Say no.
it's,
If you don't have it, you don't
I
have it.
think it's probably somewhere around
Yeah, in her head
13,
right now.
14. Yeah, I am. I am.
I know that look.
3.4. 5, 7. It's probably around 14 million.
Okay, great. That's perfect. So that's through October 25th and the year ends November 30th. So we're talking about another 4 million, almost 5 million this month. With your estimate, your estimated gross amount is 18.9.
Well, this was just an estimate.
Okay,
This was just an estimate.
I appreciate that. It seems a little bit out of whack.
Well, this interest earned on the treasure slide is through the end of September.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about 2 months. October and November. So the 2.5 million or so a month is been the average interest this year.
Yeah, if you look at the amount, so for September, the treasurer had 1.7 million, for August, 1.7, July, 1.4, June, 2 million, May, 1.5.
Okay. So no 2.5s in there. So it's still a little bit, the 18 million, I'm just saying 18.9 seems a little bit high given the remaining time available for money to come in on as interest, right?
Well, if you look at the chart, it's been trending higher the last 5 months than the first few months of the year. It was 1.31, 993,001, and then it's been trending higher the last 5 months, 6 months.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, very good. Thank you, Kathleen. Oh, wait, one more question.
No, a question. I just requesting we take a small break. We've been 2.5 hours.
Would everybody like to take a personal break?
No, I would not. I'd like to wrap this up actually, and we'll have the rest of our day. I'm sorry, I mean, has to be recognized.
Yes.
About 2 minutes.
Okay, why don't we just,
Go ahead. I'm not gonna say anything you haven't heard me say before, Cliff.
just as a personal
Oh, thanks.
courtesy, how about if we just give 5 minutes, personal courtesy, hard start. Who's ever in here we're gonna start 5 minutes.
Very courteous.
Hmm?
Oh, it's a frog.
I'm pretty sure it's saved for.
Am I the?
You have to say?
Am I the tutor?
Drop mic, nothing else to talk about.
You guys ought to go, I mean, I don't.
I think he's gonna.
I'll be on Zoom.
You won't miss it.
Right, so we don't need to do it.
Okay.
There you
Okay.
go.
I have to make some money. I'm losing money.
Oh, 14.
today.
Should have.
Correct. It's all on public display.
On hold it.
The hearing will happen. Truth and taxation.
Yes.
I don't know how many more minutes.
We need.
You've been doing okay, it looks like.
He's still sleeping. 9-week-old little baby.
Whatever.
Did you see him?
Yeah, that's good. I'll call him.
Left and he was speaking outside.
I mean, if you annualize what we've collected, it's.
Maybe.
What was the estimated amount from last year?
I don't know what last year is, but he's saying this year 18
So that means it won't.
and I got 18.6 based upon, so.
Time was 14 something. Okay. Well,
Interest rates have gone up.
take that.
But that also assumes that interest rates aren't gonna go down.
Yeah.
Which
That's arguable.
they may or may not.
And again.
All right, so you're gonna talk me through.
For us, I really, it's an estimate.
Yes, I need some help.
What we can go to the bank with is 14, already collected, right? Already in hand.
We like have a
Vote stipulate to work with that number.
Yes, very,
If the only vote.
the only vote.
Is the.
You can only vote on that one thing.
Actually.
Oh,
I don't understand how we
it's
can
not
vote
even
on
a
one
vote.
thing.
Just put it, we're just putting it on.
Whatever.
And if we do.
Yeah.
All right.
See how we can vote on one thing.
Well, it's points.
Well, if you can
All we're
vote,
trying to do is say.
we're allowed to vote on one thing, why aren't we allowed to vote on 17? I didn't get the reason for the,
And all we're doing, you know.
I can
This
ask.
is just to make us comply with code. For that display that.
We have to have a forum to do that?
It could be amended.
Yeah, yes.
If I got it on display, so no one can see it.
But it's, so if we deny,
Paid off.
Have a forum.
If you leave,
or if we vote no on it, then what happens?
room.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Right at the absence. 6, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Close down the bathroom.
Sorry.
11.
Bradford's here and.
Good job.
Mine?
Yeah, I'm getting some.
Oh. Right.
Seats.
Vern's gonna make the motion.
Yes. Yeah, he's gonna set.
Well, I need to go too.
Some of us didn't get private deliveries of Diet Coke. That's true. That is true. Yes, that is true.
We don't have any more.
I forget there's a vending machine downstairs. I forget about that. Oh, boy. Forget about it.
Oh, you were saying once he cited the French Revolution, you said what? Oh.
Yeah, we do a head count.
The quotation, what she really said.
You got your
was,
breath, you just push me.
Oh, okay, but it doesn't translate.
I set it down for a bit and then I grabbed it.
Is
because I was
that
trying to get in.
she wasn't
Yeah,
being
I put it
mean.
down too. And
She was just
my
being
purse, and now I'm like.
Yeah.
For the-
She
if
thought,
not,
well,
then we're
they can't
gonna-
eat bread,
we're
they
gonna be
can eat
stuck.
bread. No, the point is,
Yeah,
means just that they're starving. There is none. There is nothing. There is none. Yeah. But they have.
Oh, that's right. Oh, search, just wait, make sure we have a quorum in the room.
Oh, much better.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah, yeah, she was a porter, but
7,
Catherine the Great had the same kind of problem.
9, 10, 11.
Oh, see how y'all.
13.
I need it.
It's funny.
It was a principality.
It's kind of goofy.
Yeah. In her, and then she married the gay, Tsar Peter III. Was he gay or was he weak? He was both.
All right, where's Bates?
Bates is
But it was.
so she'll be back. Time up?
Yes.
He's probably in the restaurant. I don't know.
Go that way. Oh, there we go.
Everybody who's in the room, please don't leave.
That's good.
Because we have to have a quorum.
I thought it was broken pretzels.
Yeah, so,
Oh, my.
okay, do we have a quorum?
Like,
They won't let you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, Vern.
So I understand. Sometimes.
Well,
You were 13. Oh, no, this is the same. It's broken too.
Can you wear them on top of each other? Or are they broken on the same?
let's do it again. We got 4, 5, 6, 7. Blair.
75 degrees out
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Go.
I can't get another pair.
Surges is leaving?
Yes, Mr. Surges is leaving. Okay, could you call the roll again, please? We're back in session.
The roll, we're reconvening. Ellen?
Alan, present.
Bates? Berman? Doherty?
Right here.
Davis? Ford is not here. Gums?
Here.
Iqbal?
All present.
Juby?
Over here.
Kenyon? Caius?
Vice President.
Leonard? Lewis? Linder? Alina?
Alina present.
Roth?
Roth here.
Sanchez?
Sanchez present.
Silva?
Silva here.
Strathman?
Strathman here.
Surges is gone. Tarver?
Tarver's here.
Tepe?
Happy here.
Williams?
Williams present remote due to work commitments.
Oh, thank you. So you are remote.
Yeah, I was here.
Young is gone, Madam Chair is here, and Davis, you are here also. So you have a quorum in-house.
Very good, thank you. Before we begin, I'll ask for a resolution to be approved. I just want to give a small update. We have been wanting additional handicap parking in front of our building. As you go out front, you will notice that we now don't just have 3 in different locations. We have 6 handicap spaces all together right now. And I believe there's a total of 7 very conveniently placed for our veterans, for our seniors, and anybody else who needs a space. I'm very pleased on this, and I was reminded today that sometimes we make small steps, but meaningful steps forward. So this, I consider a long overdue, very meaningful step forward for the convenience of our constituents and our board members. So very happy with that. We are now on, which would have been consent agenda. And obviously much of this is not on consent. So may I please have a motion and a second to approve a resolution?
Madam Chair, I'd like to put forth a motion to approve putting the fiscal year 24 draft budget to be placed on public display.
Caius would second.
Second. Is there any discussion on this?
Only that, and Mr. Tepe stated it clearly and precisely that it's only to put it on display because one of the first slides, the 5th bullet point includes a tax levy increase, which means that, as I've said all along, my vote will still be no. I would rather that this was not what we were putting on display, but under advice of counsel, it's important that we have one put on display. Interrupt me. Sorry.
Yes, Mr. Frank.
SAO Frank. And just so we are clear and to provide you some, concern or alleviate some of the concerns pursuant to statute, by voting this up, it still can be completely amended. There's nothing that prevents you from changing it after the fact. It's just simply to deal with the procedural requirement of having it up for 15 days before you vote or debate it on the 21st.
Is everybody clear?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was interrupt me for a second there, but we've heard a lot of the same tales today, the woes of budgetary process, the needs of everybody, the cost of doing things. Nobody wants their bill to go up. I think we may have made a little bit of progress with, people beginning to understand that our portion of the bill isn't what really drives most of the increase that would increase if we charged nothing and went home. But here we are. And stay off the levy, stay off the gas pump, leave the RTA allocation alone. These are things I've been saying all along. Never ignore new growth. I always say that one too. We're gonna need more money. Oh, one other thing, Kathy, in her fiscal conservative approach to it, and I applaud that, warns us about, the dwindling reserve. But the policy change from 180 to 90 means that extra reserve should be taken to zero. The whole point of that policy is that you don't maintain more than 90 days worth. So yes, that's actually for spending. I know, because there's a slide that says, oh, look, by here it gets down to zero. It's like, that's what it's supposed to do. So try to not trouble your mind too much about that. That's the point of that exercise. Beyond that, we're going to continue to need money. So why we haven't had more of a discussion on it's either 1/4 or 1/2, depending on who you ask, of 1% on sales tax and a referendum question, so that we get ready for that, because by everyone's estimate, it is much more than the proposed levy increase and gas tax put together every year. Somewhere between 13 and $19 million, depending on which one of the estimates or, financial experts you want to believe. And that one goes to the public. I think that we all have developed a greater understanding of our budgetary process and of the fact that we really try hard to cut back and save money and everything more than the public, because we fail to communicate with them enough. So if we're all in agreement that we provide a good service and we're a good value, but eventually we're going to need more money, then we need to coalesce into a group with a unanimous front that says, here's an option, folks. We'll stay off the levy. Give us a vote on this sales tax, and we will collect money that, yes, you have to designate what it goes to, but trust me, you collect that much money, you will alleviate the pressure on the rest of this budget. Even if you take the most conservative one of $13 million a year. So I would much rather see this group get together and get behind an idea like that, because it really does solve a lot of these problems. There's a lot of problems in the world that, that big piles of money don't solve, but not this one. A big pile of money does solve this problem. So I don't know why we haven't spent more time having that discussion than this one. So for me, it's been a no. It's a no today. It's going to be a no 15 days from now. Stay off the levy, stay off the pump, leave the RITA allocation alone, and let's go to the people and sell them collectively as a group the relatively pain-free notion of spend $100 and have to give us another quarter or 2 quarters.
Thank you. And once again, I'm going to recognize you, Mr. Berman. Very, very much like Mr. Iqbal's conversation to make sure that our insurance is protected and we have little risk. Mr. Davis, this is going to be presented not at this meeting. It will be discussed, and I'd like to move that to finance where it truly belongs. And I know that committee will have a robust conversation about that. There are some parameters to that levy that you should all be aware of. And I'm sure that Mr. Frank is also going to be able to present that information as well, what has been researched, knowing that this is not just a windfall, it's very directive. So that will all be discussed in the near future to decide whether or not when it eventually gets to the full board, if you would like to pursue that. So, Mr. Berman.
Yes, Berman. Reserves.
Takes,
Turn your microphone on, please.
I'm sorry. Reserves, it takes us, a long period of time to build up reserves. It don't build up overnight. The reserves that we've had have been built up over years. Reserves is like the savings account that we have at home. You know, we don't use that savings account basically to pay for our groceries. Well, in this case, our groceries is our budget. And our budget should be made up of revenue that we have. I think our reserves should be spent on those things that are very unusual, which is certainly our buildings, other things that we know are coming up in the future. So I think the reserves, I agree it should be zero, but I believe our reserves should be paid or spent on something other than our budget during the year. The other thing is we passed a resolution earlier this year that our budget would not include any reserves. And here we are proposing a budget with reserves. Now, how do we do that? We're going against what we've already recommended. So I don't know how we straighten that out, but that in my mind, but I think the reserves are great. It's taken us a great number of years to build up those reserves. And I don't think, we've been blessed with our dollars for COVID and our dollars for ARP the last 3 years that have sort of clouded our attitude towards dollars that we have to spend. And I think that we really do need to look at our future. I think our budgeting this year is much tighter than what we've seen in the last 3 years. And I think that we've, in the last 3 years, we've come up with excess revenue at the end of the year that we've been able to put into our reserves or wherever we wanted to, or spend it the next year. But I don't think we're going to have that budget fluctuation we had the last 3 years. I really don't. I think we're much tighter in our budgeting now than we were, and we'll find out. But we can't count on that $10 million or $12 million that we got in the last few years at the end of the year to put back in. So those are my comments. Reserves are great. I think we worked hard at getting that, and I'd like to see it spent on something really worthwhile. If we're talking about $41 million and what we estimate as to what our building requirements are going to be in the next 4 or 5 years, that's a good place for our reserves.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think we're ready then. None online. Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, so this is displaying the draft budget. Ellen.
Alan, aye.
Berman, yes. Oh,
Bates,
Yes.
Berman.
Berman, yes.
Okay, Doherty,
yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Ford's not here. Gums,
Gums, yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, no.
Juby,
Ruby, aye.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Yes.
Leonard, Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Linder, Molina,
Molina, no.
Roth,
Roth, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Silva,
Yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surgis is gone. Tarver,
Tarver, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Williams
Williams, no.
is gone and it passes. 3
Passes.
noes.
Okay, very good. All right, there's no need for executive session. However, I am going to ask our parliamentarian to read an email, a public comment that was not included in the previous public comment because of other issues. But I would like for this to be read out loud so it is on the record.
Okay, this is from Corinne Owens.
Oh.
Sent Saturday, November 4th. Stop raising the real estate taxes. It continues every year in one form or another. You are driving seniors out of the community. There needs to be a cap of dollar amount allowed to be charged. A real, all caps, discount for seniors instead of a freeze on assessment. It's a joke.
Those in homes that are more expensive do not use proportionally more services. Seniors use less. Your cap on income for seniors is outdated. Stop spending ridiculous amounts. Control your budgets, particularly on pensions and teachers' salaries. Parks are beautiful, but the cost of summer programs, among other things, are out of proportion. The east side of Geneva is regularly ignored in terms of improvements, particularly the Fox River Park. The bathrooms need to be open year-round and renovated. It is used all year by children and seniors who need the facilities. If small towns in Saugatuck and Douglas can have bathrooms available and open all year, there is no reason why we can't in Geneva and Batavia. There we go. That is the end of the written public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, if there's no other business, I'd like to have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
I would like to move, we adjourn.
Thank you. Both is seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?